Chapter 7. The only option that was on the table at this point arose through the local alcohol and drug service. I'd been on a waiting list to go into a residential treatment centre as part of my addiction recovery. They decided to fast-track my referral as the counsellor was worried that I would relapse in my current state, and a vacancy had become available in an Auckland rehab which specialised in drug addiction. I'd been clean for 9 months by now, and I didn't want to lose ground on this either. So I agreed to go. I wanted to go, if only to have some sense of moving forward, of being in a place where maybe someone would know what was the matter with me. It certainly seemed a better idea than continuing to deteriorate alone in my flat. At least it was a plan. The plan did and didn't work. Life in rehab was confronting and grueling, highly structured and disciplined, a high emotional content and a strong degree of motivation expected of us if we wanted to keep our places there. It was much easier to get thrown out than it had been to get in. I was struggling and totally distracted by my mind's ceaseless preoccupation with how and when to commit suicide. Once again my mind was in two, one part running completely unchecked, constantly embroidering different scenarios and sizing up opportunities to carry them out, the other part watching as if a detached observer. I desperately wanted to not have to go through with the suicide, but was fighting to stay afloat under the heavy mental pressure of the obsession. My head physically hurt trying to contain the mass of thoughts. I was learning in rehab that the two hallmarks of addictive thinking are obsession and compulsion. It seemed only a matter of time before my obsession with suicide would give way to a compulsion to carry it out. Rehab did provide the opportunity, though, to be observed at close range. We were required to attend one-to-one counselling, group therapy sessions, and to be in the company of others at all times. Isolation was a no-no, and recognition of the fact that ourselves alone can be very bad company. I totally related to that. Time passed and I was making no tangible progress, despite the fact that I was participating and doing all the suggested things to the best of my ability. My despair was intensifying, as relief seemed even further from my grasp. If all this wasn't working, then what could? I knew I couldn't live like this indefinitely. I was starting to realise that I was very sick, but with what, I didn't have a clue. At around the 3-week mark, I tried to communicate to my counsellor the ferocity of the chaos still reigning in my head, the nameless fears, the ongoing adrenaline-charged panic attacks, my inability to sleep properly, the suicidal obsession. I disclosed to her that I was feeling more hopeless, not less, and that I didn't understand why the other group members seemed to be getting better, and I was not. I told her that I could see no way out of my distress and that I intended to kill myself. My plan was typically Auckland. I didn't tell her this part, though. I was going to find my way to the Grafton Bridge on one of our group outings and take the jump. I meant it. All that was left was to wait for the opportunity and to hope I didn't chicken out. Well, that conversation sure got a reaction. For the second time in a few weeks, I was again placed on suicide watch. The counsellor set up a roster with staff to make sure I was checked on throughout the night, and she promised that she would seek medical help the very next day. I had to agree to keep the doctor's appointment, which meant staying alive for one more night, and I had to sign a contract, a popular counselling tool of the day, promising not to kill myself between now and then. To be honest, I don't think it was signing the piece of paper that got me through that night. More, it was a tiny sliver of hope that had appeared again, that maybe this doctor might know something. He did. He told me I was depressed, which I didn't entirely believe, because that was just a bit of sadness, surely, not this full-blown crazy trauma my mind was relentlessly inflicting upon me. He explained to me that the depression was causing severe anxiety and that I needed medical treatment for this. He instructed me to take the medicines he would prescribe to me, and I could come back again and let him know how I was getting on. So I left his office with a prescription for diazepam, Valium, some antidepressants and some sleeping medication. What a relief. Knowing what I did about drugs, I knew that at least my thinking might shut down for a bit and I would maybe get some rest. But there was a problem, and herein lies one of the great holes in which people with complex mental, emotional, and addictive presentations fall through. The problem was put to me by the treatment centre manager that I would not be able to use those medications whilst in rehab. Theirs was a program of complete abstinence from drugs, and that included any mind or mood altering medications. I would have to make a choice to continue on without them, even against the doctor's advice, and carry on being tortured by myself, or to leave the centre to go where I didn't know so that I could start on the medications. I did not know how to make this choice. I was as a child, really, and struggled with making even the simplest decisions. So I followed the manager's advice, which was to leave, and let her contact my mother to arrange flying me down to her in the South Island. When I got to Mum's, the extent of my mental disturbance was immediately evident to her. She didn't know what to do. Who would? She was completely confounded by the failures of the various attempts we had made to get some continuity of help and support. Our contacts with professionals had mainly led to naught, even though I had made no secret of the fact that I intended to kill myself, and I was so obviously unwell. Surely we weren't the only family that had gone through something like this. I will always be grateful to Mum for her perseverance and persistence over this time, despite the feeling of being stymied at every turn. This is what finally happened. Out of all other ideas, Mum rang a family friend who was a psychologist. On hearing of the condition I was in, she gave Mum the phone number of a new community psychiatric team that had recently formed in the region and advised her to contact them immediately. This marked a turning point. This was to be my first introduction to the mental health services. Rita, a community psychiatric nurse, arrived at Mum's house in her little white hospital car. Those cars would have become fodder for many paranoid moments down the track. She was not at all the white-coated, chart-carrying Nurse Ratched I had in my head, but a friendly, relaxed and gentle person with whom I made an immediate connection. Her words were to the effect of, "Oh my God, how long have you been like this for?" And I explained to her that things had been really bad for a year now. She was the first person to say to me, "It doesn't have to be like this." She told me I could recover and live normally again, but I would initially need hospital care to be on the safe side. I wasn't sure if I believed her, but I remember feeling this immense relief, this whole weight of the struggle to stay alive lifted from my shoulders. I didn't have to fight my way through this anymore, and even though psychiatric care was not something I'd ever aspired to, I felt overwhelmed with the feeling that I could finally let go and acquiesce to whatever treatment was going to give me my sanity and my life back. I finally felt as though someone understood what I'd been trying to say. So off we all went to mental hospital.